And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the monastery, the open bar of the internet, the world's greatest shit show, and the place where we, the good brothers and sisters of this most holy of temples, seek enlightenment through the drunkest, craziest, and most batshit ways possible. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me, I have a newcomer into the temple, coming to us from Rusted Portal Games, previously known for Apocalypse the Risen, which has made its foray into Pathfinder in the past. Now coming to us through what's known as 5e plus spine powered. We'll get into that. The one and only Donaven Brines. I'm not doing a Scottish brogue. How you doing today, man? Or tonight, technically.
Doing fantastic, Mildred. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
So, I'll start with the humble beginnings, in a sense. I'd like you to walk me through your first introduction to role-playing games and what made it stick.
I'm pretty sure that I was in elementary school at a Catholic school, and I had a first edition DMG, and I was running Theater of the Mind in one of those concrete tunnels. That's probably the very first introduction. And I bought the first edition handbooks at Toys R Us, or rather my grandparents, I think, convinced them. And this is, of course, peak Satanic Panic time frame, and it was great.
Surprised it'd even be at a toy store during peak Satanic Panic.
It was great at Toys R Us. A fantastic memory of being able to find that on the shelf at Toys R Us now.
Yeah. And
second edition was the long-running campaign that I was 16 when we were deep in that, playing at the library in high school.
Yeah, I know the feeling about playing in a library and trying your best to keep quiet. Although I've seen some libraries that have these semi-soundproofed study rooms. Those are great for role-playing.
They are fantastic, absolutely, yes. Continued that into college, which has more of those.
Yeah. And of course, if you know your history, then you know that role-playing kind of was born out of the college historian crowds.
Yes.
But
chainmail-esque. Yes.
Yeah, chainmail and the like, because, well, wargaming was significantly big in the 70s. Though a lot of them were obviously focused on stimulating historical battles, whether it be in World War I or II or the Napoleonic era and so on. Of course, you also had the infamous monster games. And I don't say that because they had monsters in them. I say that because they were way too damn big. You've probably seen the map for the Campaign for North Africa game.
I have.
Including that infamous picture of a small child laying next to the board for size comparison.
It's equally as impressive as a laminated Waterdeep map.
Well, from what I never got a chance to play that because, well, playing it would take too long. I have heard that when it get broken out at certain bases, inevitably the fight would start.
Of course it would.
Yeah. I mean, this is a game that penalizes the Italians if their pasta isn't properly cooked.
Also, I've never played it, and that's funny. Al dente.
Yeah, that's an actual rule in the book. Okay, I tell a partial lie. I did play it, but I played a computer conversion of it.
Much more compact.
Much more compact. All the roles are being done in the background, so it's not going to take an eternity to play through. But
I feel like that is my Twilight Imperium future as well.
Now, with that in mind, when it comes to Apocalypse Risen, was this a campaign that you had been doing for the longest time, and then opted to make it into a campaign setting book?
It was not. This was an idea that I had had in my mind and been slowly working on in the background while playing many other games, including the aforementioned second edition campaign that lasted the better part of a decade, mixed in with a great deal of Cyberpunk 2020, a whole lot of World of Darkness, primarily werewolf.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of flavor there. The very first game that my friends and I, first RPG that my friends and I created, was a Highlander variant for that, long before there was one. Hide Sword, great ability.
Mm-hmm.
I've always designed, going back to my original Stratego board game, there are a dozen rule variants, including my favorite Nines Can Carry bombs, and move them around the board. I've always been a designer, and I spent a lot of time in the video game industry, not designing or making games, but a good portion of 5 years of my time at Nintendo trying to make them better for third-party companies. And I had this idea, this game that I wanted to make, that I wanted to play, ultimately, probably more than anything at the time. It was, okay, this is what Constantine could have been like during this period of time. And then I didn't care for zombies. Never really cared about any zombie movies, zombie TV shows, until the first episode of The Walking Dead. The pilot drew me in because it wasn't about zombies. And I never really got that before. Which are Risen. It's not really about them either. Even though they're in the title, which Risen, what we call zombies in our world. But it's that marrying of the religious, supernatural horror and survival horror with dark fantasy that was the game that I wanted. And so I decided to make it.
And it's funny you bring up The Walking Dead, because the sole reason the comic even got made was because Kirkman told a massive lie.
What is that exact story?
So now, up until this point, he was mostly known for gimmicky stuff like Battle Pope, and he wanted to do a comic book about a zombie apocalypse. And at this time, he was working with Image, and Image was hesitant on the matter because this was shortly after that one remake of Day of the Dead that Snyder did, that ended up sinking like a bag of rocks. And the hesitance was, well, this whole zombie thing has been way too overexposed in other media, and no comic about a zombie apocalypse has ever been successful, or more or less done for that matter. So he had said that the zombie apocalypse was actually the work of aliens, and once the reveal would happen, everything would fall into place. He never had any intention of doing that reveal. And by the time everyone figured out he was full of crap, the thing was so successful nobody brought it up.
Zombies and aliens.
Mm-hmm.
That's a smash up card deck, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Basically, he had sold them a zombie apocalypse by telling them that it wasn't really a zombie apocalypse. Which I put up there with the wagon train to the stars that Roddenberry pulled to sell the original Star Trek. The sole reason that was done was because Westerns were a big thing for CBS at the time. It was like, okay, this is a Western. It wasn't.
And
the rest is, well, history. But given that, I'd like to pick your brain a little bit for some of the other inspirations outside of the zombie apocalypse, or outside of the Walking Dead. What would be some of the other media that served as inspiration for Apocalypse Risen?
Constantine, for sure, as mentioned, and Mad Max was early.
Mm-hmm.
Although I didn't want it. We have all the rules for vehicles in the campaign setting. I didn't want that to dominate the setting. Instead, resources dominated. Warehouse 13. You cannot just most normal characters can't just make magic items. They happen by circumstance. Might be an item that you're carrying and do something great while you're carrying it. Or it might be somebody's thing that they did something terrible with. Or a branch that got hit by excessive amounts of lightning in a supernatural storm that becomes a wand of lightning.
Mm-hmm.
Warehouse 13 was amazing for that. Dresden Files. And again, Dresden Files and Constantine, there's a 13-year period in which the 7 seals are broken in our storyline. And each seal that was broken released a little bit more of the darkness and a little bit of magic back to the world.
Mm-hmm.
Those two pieces of media certainly capture some of that. As things are going to hell but haven't fully gone to hell. The society hasn't collapsed yet.
Mm-hmm.
Van Helsing, although I feel like werewolf and vampire lore has been done very well elsewhere, so it's not included in our multiverse.
Yeah.
Supernatural is I'm now in season 11 of my very first watch through of Supernatural. I refused because I was already designing this. I had friends telling me, you should watch this. No, it sounds too amazing. I don't want to steal from it. And I'm looking at it now, I'm like, wow, I could totally run this game in my world.
Like you tried everything you could to not do it and ended up doing it.
In many ways.
Sometimes the universe just pushes people in a certain way.
Well, and now since the campaign setting is out and been out for about 2 years for Pathfinder, as you mentioned, that was the first system we built Apocalypse the Risen on, and then 5e plus Spine Powered for about a year now.
Yeah, I could certainly see that. Now, with this new version, you are calling it 5e plus Spine, and I think it's important to nail down what that distinction is.
Spine Powered for us was, well, first off, we do not use any of the classes, ancestry, creatures found in standard D&D material. We have all new classes, everything, ancestry, classes, creatures built from the ground up to properly represent the multiverse, the world that we've created. Angels have fallen, the chains have been released from the darkness, and demons are now able to walk the earth again. Magic has been completely released, but supernatural magic as well as otherworldly magics have been completely released on Earth. There's guns, there's magic, and they're all in balance. And so Spine Powered was a way to first make sure that that is actually in balance. We use a lot of the mechanics, the framework, as chatting beforehand, the framework of 5e D&D. You know your advantage, your disadvantage. You know how the action mechanics work, movement, all those things are in place. But with them, changing some of the terminology to fit with our lore, but also using the material that's there in different ways. We have mechanics for one of our spellcasters, the Harbinger. They have to, in order to cast spells, they have to go into a mystic slip. The mechanic for it works very similarly to a Barbarian Rage. So they go in, they're in a mystic slip, they're casting their spells, channeling cosmic magic straight from some terrible source, and then when they drop out of it, they are sickened for a period of time or exhausted, depending on the system in question. But we use conditions in a lot of different ways, and we use that rage mechanic for that class as well as our Maverick when they go into Foresight, which is, I guess, some other media that has influenced the Sherlock Holmes movies, where kind of predict the way a fight was going to go as he's entering into a hand-to-hand fight. Foresight for the Maverick is a mechanic that tries to emulate that. Well, we can't exactly do it, but they get a little extra action, they move a little faster, and so they enter into Foresight, and then when they drop out, they gain a level of exhaustion.
I can certainly get that. Now, if someone was coming into this with a background in 5e, putting aside races, classes, and all that, just when it comes to the core mechanics, what would be the major bullet points that you'd bring up as far as what changes on the die rolling?
We call advantage, disadvantage, hindered, and restricted. Doesn't change the mechanic at all. There's reasons for it. It wasn't just to change the names to be different, to be clear. But we also added some names to things that you will find in some different aspects of 5e that aren't named. We have competent and greater competency bonuses, or incompetent and greater incompetent penalties, where you get to add a d4 or subtract a d4, add a d6 or subtract a d6 from your roll. So we gave it a title so we could just say, give yourself a competency bonus. More tools in the toolbox for a GM. The elegance of advantage, disadvantage wears off after a time as someone who's played 5e for quite a while. It's great to have that flexibility where you can just, on the fly, just give that one way or the other and keep going. But then it becomes limited, and we didn't want that. We also wanted to make sure that for a dark fantasy setting, post-apocalyptic horror game, that there was death back on the table. We have plenty of things that are some of the ancestry, some of the conditions where you start off with a death save, a failure already. If you are a Lazarus, who's a soul who's escaped from purgatory and made whole on Earth, you have some past memories. You also start all of your death saves with a failure. Well, if you happen to be a Lazarus who has taken the corrupted template and accepted a piece of darkness inside, well, you start with 2. Death comes easier. It's not run around the world, collect all the loot. This is definitely a gritty system, a gritty campaign, and a standalone campaign.
All right, I can get that. Now, with that in mind, on the bullet point about original classes, you mentioned the path option of jump class path and tailored class path. What exactly does that entail, and what's the advantages and disadvantages of either?
For the new Kickstarter that launches tomorrow morning, the ATR Survivor Starter, it's Expansion 1, the first campaign expansion to Apocalypse the Risen, we're introducing 8 new classes. Those classes were only previously seen as NPC, non-playable, and definitely lower power in the campaign setting. They were meant as background. We decided that they were actually very important and wanted to make the everyday survivor. So you can play the campaign setting either 25 years after the fall of society where the setting takes place, or any of the years prior to that after the seals started to be broken. And these everyday survivors, they're the people that they make the colony work when the iconic heroes aren't around. They're the ones that actually protect the farm when the heroes are out making a trade alliance with some Darkland colony across the way, or haven't returned home for reasons unknown. So to make those classes even more interesting, and because this is not the first expansion planned, When those classes reach 5th level, the everyday survivors, when they reach 5th level, they have the choice to either jump class to one of the iconic hero classes, picking up 1st level like a traditional multi-class, but specifically designed to smoothly transition to a certain class. The auxiliary is one of those classes that has one of the easiest connections. The auxiliary, everyday survivor, transitions directly to a splicer, the tech mage, heroic iconic, or the combatist who naturally goes to the enforcer path. But instead, if you don't want to make that jump, you want to tailor your own class because you really like your colonist character. Colonist can pick any of the heroics. Instead, if you want to make your colonist who has insignificant, which is such a fun ability, goes up in a percentage chance that an enemy will just ignore you because you're insignificant and your shovel isn't scary. And suddenly, when you're selecting, customizing tailored class options, you're selecting sneak attack, multi attack, or extra attack as abilities, and you are dangerous. Or you're the spellcaster that just gets ignored while you stand there and blow things up. You can start selecting what are class abilities for other classes or tailored versions of those, gated off to correct levels, but where you have a partially, it's kind of like a partially multi-classed character that you design yourself. It's the thing that people want to do when they're splash classing, but without breaking the system.
Yeah. Now, I'd like to play a little bit of parallels. So, and admittedly, some of this isn't going to be one-on-one, but I'd like to go through the classes that were in the core version of Apocalypse: The Risen, and kind of get a feel for what players of certain D&D classes might take to those classes better than others. I realize
Absolutely.
it's not going to be a perfect 1-to-1, but a close enough. This not the same abilities or the like, but the same feel, the same gameplay loop, or a close approximation thereof.
Which we have intentionally. So yes, let's play this game.
All right. So first is Conservator.
Druid. If
And
elf,
actually, I have to correct myself. The first one is Arbiter. I don't know why I jumped straight to Conservator.
Arbiter, Paladin.
All right.
The purveyor of justice.
Conservator is technically next, but we already tackled that. Enforcer.
Fighter.
All right. Harbinger.
Partially Hound are the partially Warlock, but different. Ultimately, instead of making a pact, they just reached out in the cosmic multiverse and had an affinity for channeling energy from that place, from the void, and risk going nuts.
Yeah. Hound.
Partially Ranger. I'm searching for the correct Keanu Reeves character, and I don't know why I can't pull it out at this very moment. No, not the Matrix.
Well, it's probably not John Wick.
Don't kick their dog. It is John Wick. Thank you.
Ah. I was also going to say Rambo circa First Blood.
Hound is very much the survivalist, or was part of a military family, or maybe was a contract killer. The paths they choose from: sniper, or oh, I don't remember the name off the top, but basically they're kind of gun fu, gun grappler.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Jackal.
Rogue.
All right, I can see
Choose
that.
your path between finder and keeper.
Yep.
So you're a trap maker, or are you really good at getting past them?
Mm-hmm. Maverick.
Gunslinger. Designed from the start. This was the very first class that I built when I was designing ATR.
Yeah. And obviously, there's no gunslinger equivalent in Core 5e, but there was in Pathfinder. Although its effectiveness is a little bit up in the air because it didn't get a whole lot of support. But that's a whole other matter.
Where I feel like we have done right.
Yeah. Shepherd.
Shepherd was the cleric that, as the person that got stuck playing clerics all the time in 2nd edition, that I always wanted to play because I love bards. It is a cleric bard. They have burning hands like a cleric should. They have sermonic performances, like Gandalf when he tells all the dwarves to shut the hell up.
Mm-hmm. And
Shout
I like the idea of. I've always liked the idea of playing as clerics. The issue that I've had is when the cleric ends up having to be relegated to the heal bot.
Right. This is not that cleric. They're certainly great healers. They're also great investigators, a la Constantine or exorcists.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You know, I can't believe, Mildred, that I missed this with the Hound, Ranger Monk. Okay, please continue.
Yeah. Well, I know which one I'm gonna get peer pressured into taking if the situation calls for it.
They're a fun class.
Yeah.
Although I'm partial.
The monk part of my moniker is not always a gimmick. The last one is Splicer.
Wizard. Except this wizard stores their spells, they're memorized. They store their spells on devices called fuses.
Mm-hmm.
Those fuses they put into a fuse box connected to a caster. They have to be able to point and aim. They roll attack rolls on most all their spells. A template spell, Burning Hands, would not. Fireball does at range with scatter dice if it misses by a certain amount.
Yeah, I can get that. And as I understand it, Magic is still using the spells per day model, but I believe you have a few things that are going to be different with how Magic works in ATR.
The spell slots and prepared spells are still the same for most of the classes. The Harbinger in particular is the one that it's a major divergence with. They get Mystic Slip rounds. That's somewhat of a limitation to what they can do because they have to be slipping for almost all of their spells.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a ritual spell, they only have to slip for the round they started, then they can drop out without penalty and finish the ritual. With their other limitations, they, based on their charisma or on their intelligence, they can only cast a particular named spell a number of times per day based on that modifier. And their spell slots are based on the other one.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason that I printed this 580-page tome, so I didn't have to remember every single minute detail just off the top of my head. But so the limitation on individual name spells, so you can end up casting quite a few more spells ultimately than a traditional spellcaster, but you can't just hammer one spell over and over without risk.
Mm-hmm.
So this is our version of, it's risky casting, but it's not risky casting. You were just talking about this in your message boards for your game.
Oh, you've been seeing that, huh?
Have. Thank you, Enix.
Yeah.
The danger of casting is insanity. If you
Mhm.
want to continue past your spell slots, or you want to cast a particular spell more than that modifier, you can do so. You, instead of rolling a check against insanity, you roll directly on the insanity chart and you gain whatever you get.
Mhm.
It's a quick way to madness.
Yeah. And I did look a bit. What I guess I could say that insanity is akin to oh, akin to wild magic, but significantly more punishing if somebody wants to make that risk.
Different than wild magic as far as what. So when you start casting and you're insane, it doesn't really affect your spells. It affects your rest of your life. As in, you start to get negative personality traits, sometimes physical manifestations and hallucinations with different triggers. So it may be every time you roll a initiative or a charisma check or something, then you start seeing hallucinations or you convulse. The role playing aspect that is important about the personality traits, I should have mentioned with Spine Powered as well. There's no alignment in Apocalypse the Risen.
Mm-hmm.
The amount of gray that dominates a post apocalyptic landscape like this is significant. The moral ambiguity of everyday life, alignment just didn't work. So we have your ancestral vibrance, frequency, and vibration, and then we have your personality, core personality,
Mm-hmm.
positive reactions, the way you tend to react when things are going well, negative reactions when things are going poorly, how you react. We start adding to those as you gain more insanity. So if you fail an insanity check, you initially start rolling on the you start rolling modified rolls on the minor chart,
Mm-hmm.
and you pick up some of those triggers and various personality disorders. But those disorders become actual disorders when you roll to the major chart or beyond. And there's rules for that. Not standard 5e rules, but built from the ground up rules for Apocalypse the Risen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can certainly get that. Now, with the Survivor starter that you're going to be kickstarting, I believe tomorrow.
Yes.
Is this intended to be a kind of starter, a kind of not a starter set as in a quick start, but akin to like a starter box set from back in the day?
It is not, and that is a failure to some degree in using the term starter.
Mm-hmm.
What it is it's an introduction to Apocalypse the Risen for people that haven't seen it. But it does so in a way that we wanted you to see what the colony is like at home, because that's the focus of the game.
Mm-hmm.
It is ultimately a sandbox that you build from the starting point of session 0. So we wrote session 0 out the way that works out of the campaign setting, which there'll be a new one of in the Survivor starter.
Mm-hmm.
The day of the rise, 25 years ago, you're just a random person, not your character, a random person on a bus with a bunch of other random people trying to get out of some major city. You have scenarios as you're trying to get out of town. Do you stop and help? Do you loot? Or do you keep going?
Mm-hmm.
Every time you stop, there's a risk you lose somebody, but you might also gain people or important materials, resources. Once you're done with those scenarios and you get to the end, that gives you a how far from that city that you decided to start in altogether. So the players and the GM are working together ultimately to build what the campaign looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And then it dictates what the colony governance is like, how many people you have, what sort of resources and things are in your colony when you start. So then you make your characters. So we turned what the all-important session 0 into the colony builder. And the ATR Survivor Starter goes back to that very important aspect, reintroduces it in another way, while also bringing in the new ancestry and classes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can certainly get that. And when it comes to doing a setup regarding the settlement, which is always a big thing in a lot of post-apocalypses. I believe you have this in the core book and as well, and it sounds like you're going to be having that in Survivor Starter.
The way that the session 0, there will be a new session 0 in the Survivor Starter.
Mm-hmm.
And the decisions, ultimately what it all ends up with, builds out that colony, that settlement.
Mm-hmm. And beyond that, do you plan on you may have, if this is already in there, I apologize in advance, but do you plan on having some setup for maintaining and expanding the settlement?
Those rules are all in the campaign setting, yes. Yep. Rules for farming, maintenance, animal husbandry. Every time I say it, it just doesn't sound right, but that's actually the term. The power plants of various types.
Mm-hmm.
Windmill, water, wheel, full-on. We mentioned the Grand Coulee Dam in there and the kind of power that it generates, because there is a colony that's taken up residence there. They sort of have kept it running.
Mm-hmm. I can certainly get that. Now, with that in mind, with Survivor Starter, you talk about 8 all new original classes. Are those new classes period to ATR, or would they just be new to people coming in for the first time?
They're new entirely.
All right.
We have a number of expansions planned. The importance to me with the Survivor Starter classes is specifically with their tailored, their way you can build them to be what you want. That every time we release a new single class in a different expansion, there'll be some additional things from there that these everyday survivors could pick up.
Mm-hmm.
So they grow as the campaign setting grows. Whereas the iconic heroes, they're built out fully. They have their capstone abilities. They're awesome, but they're not going to change, except for other paths that they will get.
Mm-hmm. I can certainly get that. Now, as I understand it, there's a few adventures, what you call incidents, that you're going to be adding into the package when it comes to this project.
There are quite a few.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on the reward tier, but we go all in. There are 7 books to be had ultimately. If you are new to Apocalypse the Risen, you can pick up the campaign setting at a discount, get the ATR Survivor Starter. Is available. When I say get, you can get it in print and PDF, or either or. If you get print, you just get the PDF, or you can get, if you're all digital, you can go that route. But Apocalypse the Risen campaign setting, ATR Survivor Starter, and then a 3-part series of incidents. Incidents are one-shot adventures that last 1 to 3 sessions, probably 3, depending on the players. Dead in the Darklands, 1st level. Demon Divided, 2nd level. Endless Descent, 3rd level.
Mm-hmm.
And then a separate, but also incident length, What's Cooking, which is the only one of these that's currently up on drive-thru. And then a brand new one that I'm writing currently and hope to plan to have delivered by Halloween for anyone that wants to run that Halloween night. Fetid Farms, 5th level, which includes 5th level pre-gens. All of these include what we call scavenge maps.
Mm-hmm.
They're play maps to drop right on the table. Print it at home, throw it on the table. 1 to 4 letter sheets
Mm-hmm.
worth of map for the encounters. Doesn't take you through the entire adventure, but some of the specific encounters that are fun to have those for. So that's 1st through 5th level. And that's enough experience and enough game sessions to have reached that no longer disposable hero power scale. And in addition to those, the things that we introduced recently at Gen Con, perilous hunts. These are just deadly encounters. You can mix them into any encounter within your campaign session. Those range from 1st through 4th level. There are 2 different 6-pack sets. 6 frightful hunts and 6 sinful hunts. They're themed, but they're all at a deadlier encounter scale based on not just the challenge of the creatures involved or the modifiers for those creatures, but the scenario itself. We have one of those, not of the ones that are in the Kickstarter tomorrow, but that's up on drive-thru now, just as a sample. We wanted to show this is what an incident looks like. Here's our format. And this is what a perilous hunt looks like. So Acid Trip is the perilous hunt on drive-thru. What's cooking is the incident. Just as examples. Everything but the hunts, the other 7 books mentioned, they're available both in print and PDF. The hunts are PDF only. And they do also include, in addition to the print and play scavenge maps, a VTT asset pack, because we are all on board getting this game onto Roll20. Depending on how successful this is will depend the speed, but it will happen.
Yeah. Now, with that in mind, for the Survivor starter, what are you shooting at as far as a page count, given the content you're going with?
360 full color hardback book.
And presuming things get funded, what would you be shooting for as far as a release window? Like summer 2025 or something?
End of year.
End of
While
2020.
the campaign setting was in layout, and I could not do anything else to get it out of layout and publish, I started writing. So I have a lot of this book written, and we gambled on the interest, and because we know good art, built our game around it, we had it illustrated. The things that will get finished between now and then are within reason.
I can certainly get that. And I will be most definitely looking forward to seeing how it develops. But with that said, I do want to sincerely thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to come all the way to my temple and enjoy the madness that happens here.
I appreciate the well wishes and couldn't be more thankful to have had the time. Thank you so much, Mildred.
And anytime you see fit to return, the door is always open. As I often say around here, drinking is not mandatory, but it is encouraged.
Cheers.
And, of course, a sincere thanks goes out to everyone who took the time out of their schedule to come onto the show and enjoy the madness. And there will be plenty more where that came from, as there is here, on the open bar of the internet. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra, I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody!